Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for this tutorial. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to design some basic content for your website. I just opened the folder that contains my HTML file from last time with all the content that we added. I'm going to go to the navigation bar at the top and click File, then click New File. We're just going to save this file right now and name it style.css. This will be our CSS file for this project, which will contain all the design information for the website. Unlike HTML files, there is no required content to be placed at the top of the CSS file. Once you've made your CSS file, you need to link it to your HTML file. This way, the computer knows that this CSS file will be used to style the web page in your HTML file. To link the two files, you're going to go to the HTML file and type this under head. This will connect your CSS file to the HTML file, so the computer can display the design of the website as well as the content. In the fifth tutorial, I was also explaining how to add different fonts from Google Fonts, but I deleted the link for the font since it wouldn't work without a CSS file anyway. Now, we can add fonts as well, so I'll show you how to add fonts from Google Fonts. Just open up to the home page like this, and click the plus sign next to the font that you want. I'll do this for Roboto. Once you select the font, this sidebar will appear. Just go to Embed and copy the link under Link, not Import. Now, we can paste the link for the font under the head tag. We can now go to the CSS file and start setting up the design of the header. None of the design information has to be in any particular order. You can style paragraphs before headers if you want to, but I'm just going to style the header first. You're just going to type header and then add curly brackets after it. These are the only type of brackets that are used in CSS. Now, we're going to go back to Google Fonts and copy the text under CSS rules. Now paste this text under the curly bracket. This text tells the computer to use the Roboto font for this header, and this next part that says sans serif tells the computer to just use the fonts without embellishments at the ends of the letters if it isn't able to access the Roboto font. If you want the computer to use a font with embellishments, if it isn't able to access the font that you want, you can write serif instead. I'm just going to keep it sans serif since it looks more similar to Roboto. Moving on, you can also change the font size of your text. You can do this by typing font size, blank. I'll just set the header to 50 pixels for now. I'll just go to the browser and refresh my page so you can see the changes that this makes. As you can see, the header got way bigger and now uses the Roboto font. Next, you can change the font color if you want. You can do this by typing color equals blank. You can use the hex code, but there are also certain names of colors that computers will understand. For example, if you have a darker background, you can use white as a color for the text, and the computer understands the color name white. If you look at the end of all the lines that we've written so far, they all have semicolons. Semicolons are like the periods in coding, as they're used to tell the computer when a line of code is finished. If you don't include a semicolon at the end of the line, the next piece of code won't work. For example, I'll add a margin right now of 50 pixels without ending this line of code. If I refresh the page, you can see that the header turns back to black because the computer didn't understand that it needed to be white because of the missing semicolon. If I go back to the code and add a semicolon, then refresh it, the header will turn back to white. I just turned the header blue so you could see it better on the screen. Going back to the topic of margins, you can set margins for your text. You can also make the margin on one side bigger than the other by using the 4 other margin elements: margin right, margin left, margin top, and margin bottom. These are the 4 margin elements. And the element that I used, that was margin on its own, this is used to set a same margin for all 4 sides. If you want to specify the margin side for the 4 sides, you can use these margin elements. Another aspect you can change about the text is center the text by doing text align : center. There are also other options for aligning the text, which you can use for the paragraph or other sections of the website. I'll refresh the page, and the text will appear in the center. Just as we've changed the design for the header, we can also change the design for paragraphs or any other section of the website that contains text. I'll show an example with paragraphs. To alter the design of a paragraph, just type P and then the curly brackets. This P is called a selector in CSS, and it determines which HTML element to apply the design information to. The portion written before the colon is called the property, and it determines the type of change that will be applied. Finally, the portion that goes after the colon is called the value, which is always specific to the property. Moving on, the background color of the page can be changed as well. This can be done using background color : blank and putting that in the body section of the CSS file. I'll use powder blue as an example. As you can see, the background turned into a light blue color. Generally, it's more aesthetically pleasing if you keep the web page white, or if you do change the background color, keep it to neutral colors. Finally, you can style images using CSS. There are many ways to style an image in CSS, and I'll be going over these methods in a tutorial focused solely on designing images. For now, I'll just go over the basics. One of the basics is changing the size of an image. For example, if I wanted to make the image on my site smaller and add a margin to it, I could type this code. This will reduce the image to half of its original size. As you can see, the image is much easier to see than it was before. In the coming tutorials, I'll focus on other ways to style an image, such as creating image galleries for a blog, changing the shape, etc. However, this is all for today's tutorial. In the next tutorial, you'll start learning about more complex content to add to your website. Thanks again for joining me for this tutorial, and check out the next tutorial to learn more.